Hi, welcome back to DBC Offroad. So today we have the Fox front coilovers in for the 4Runner. So we're gonna do a quick rundown of the differences between the Bilstein and the Fox. I have the stock strut here just for a little bit of comparison. I mean, they're basically the same size and length diameters as the Bilstein. The only difference on the stock shock, the collar here is fixed, and on the Bilstein it's adjustable. So let's hold. Get rid of that. Let's hold these up for comparison. Okay, so the overall length, these don't appear to be extended travel Foxes. So the overall length from the mounting eyelet on the bottom to the top is 22.5 inches for both. The coil length is also the same at 12.25 inches. One thing to note, the Bilsteins are set for 2.5 inches of ride height. So the adjustment collar on the bottom is set all the way to the top, so they're at maximum preload. So it has compressed the stock coil just a little bit. The Foxes, on the other hand, right now, they appear to be set for 0 ride height adjustment. So the coil doesn't have as much preload and it's not compressed as much. So once we get the Foxes adjusted for the about 2.5 inches of ride height, I'll measure the coil again and let you know the difference. So the biggest difference in the coil, though, is the actual coil diameter. So the Fox coil, it's an IBOT coil, I believe, and it's actually 4.75 inches in diameter. And then the stock coil for the 4Runner is 4.4 inches in diameter. This will matter because all over the internet you'll see forums asking, do you need upper control arms? Well, if you're moving up to the Foxes, I would definitely say yes, because the coil diameter has increased and you need more clearance around the shock at full droop. So another difference, the shock body on the Bilstein actual body is 2 inches in diameter, and the Fox, obviously they're sold as 2.5, so it's 2.5 inches in diameter. To adjust the ride height, we'll go over that real quick. So the Bilsteins have a clip. You have to take the top hat off the coil and remove the coil, and then there's a clip that you can move in 4 different positions. Right now it's set at the tallest position for 2.5 inches of ride height. Compress the spring, put the hat back on, and then you put the coil back onto the rig. The Foxes are a little bit different. The Foxes have this top collar adjustment, so you need to compress the springs again. There's an Allen head right here. You just loosen this a little bit, and then with a spanner wrench or anything you can get in one of the holes at the top here, you'll adjust the collar down, add the preload, and then decompress the springs. One thing to note is that you have to take the Foxes off. You actually have to take it off of the 4Runner every time if you want to adjust ride height. They can't be adjusted on the rig, which they appear like they could be, but you have to take them off every time. So some of the other differences, obviously we have a reservoir here, which will help with heat dissipation and extend the dampening ability on longer off-road trips. Most everything on the Fox is made out of aluminum. The top mounting plate, the body, I believe is steel, but the lower coil bucket is aluminum, and then the actual shaft itself. The shaft is quite a bit bigger than the Bilstein. The Bilstein is a little smaller welded shaft down at the bottom. But just the build components, you paid a lot of money for it, and so it's got a little bit of a bling factor to it. So we'll install these and then do some off-road tests and then see if it's worth all the money you paid for them. Okay, so now here we have both of the rear shocks to give a little quick comparison. So the Bilstein, one thing to note is they're quite a bit lighter. And then the rear shock for the Fox, quite a bit heavier. Part of it is, you know, the reservoir. So I ordered the Foxes from AccuTune Offroad, and they actually prefer to use a Tundra rear shock. So this is actually a Fox shock for a Tundra, and then they change out the bushings and the eyelet at the bottom to fit the 4Runner. So, you know, obviously standing side by side, they are 2 inches in overall length difference. You know, if you were to hold it up, part of it is just so you can get two more inches of extended travel throughout the range of the shock. So the overall length for a mounting surface to mounting surface from the Fox is 26 inches, and then it's 24 inches for the Bilstein. The shock body diameter, obviously again, Fox 2.5, so they're 2.5 inches in diameter, the body, and then the Bilstein body is 2 inches in the rear as well. Other than that, you know, the shaft size are different. This one's covered up with the boot, but the shaft size on the Fox is quite a bit bigger, and then they have the remote reservoir. So there's no ride height adjustment with the actual shock in the rear. The ride height has to be done with replacing the coils in the rear suspension. So next we'll compare the upper control arms so you can see a difference in those as well. Okay, for the upper control arms, I really wanted to zoom in so we can get a better idea of what's going on here. Part of the reason why is because on the forums, you know, all over, do I need upper control arms? Do I need to change out the stock ones? Will there be issues? This will give you an idea of why you should get upper control arms if you upgrade your shocks. So I just used a socket extension, and we'll just kind of measure, you know, the overall area you have for the coil. So in this kind of corner here, you have about 5 1/4 inches. Same thing in this kind of crook of the arm here, you have about 5 1/4 inches. And somewhere in the maximum, it's about 6 5/8 inches. So if we switch over to the Icon upper control arm, you can see here at this crook you have about 6 1/4 inches. This one's about 6 1/4 inches, and then the maximum space is about 7 1/4. So overall, there's much more room for the coil to go into, and this is especially needed with the new Fox shocks because the new Fox shocks have the larger coil, or the larger diameter coil. So overall, there's about, you know, 3/4 inches more room with the Icon. Another issue that is pretty common is the angle of the ball joints. So the Delta joint has a little groove here to maximize the angle of the actual ball joint. The stock upper control arms don't. I don't know if you can really see too much. I'll post the exact angles between the two. But one of the big issues with the stock upper control arm and just the angle of the cup and the ball together is that at maximum droop, the suspension actually binds on the upper control arm. So at maximum droop, you're not extending the shock as far as you possibly can. Some other differences with the upper control arms is the stock ones are just stamped steel. It's kind of been rolled over. They're pretty lightweight. They seem like kind of flimsy, honestly. The bushing here is a rubber bushing with the metal insert at the bottom. They're not serviceable, and you basically just have to replace the whole thing if it went out. The Icon upper control arms have a polyurethane, I believe it's polyurethane bushing, and Zerk fittings so that everything is greasable on the inside as well. And then the angles of the cup are a little bit different, and you get maximum droop travel out of your shocks that you just spent so much money on. The other thing is the construction, they're tubular steel. So these, without this in there, these are quite a bit heavier. and they seem significantly more durable and for off-road abuse. So that's just a quick look at the upper control arms. We'll get everything installed and then show you the difference out on the trail. Okay, so in order to adjust the ride height or the preload on the Fox suspension, you have to adjust this collar up here. We need to compress the springs first and then adjust the collar. If you can see here, it comes with about 1/4 inch of thread showing. These are adjustable, claimed 0 inches to 3 inches. So we're gonna add about 1 inch to 1.25 inches, because just how the suspension on the 4Runner works, every, we'll say, inch you add here actually increases at the tire or at the hub double that amount. So I'll add about 1 inch to 1.25 inches so that we can achieve the 2 to 2.5 inches of ride height. So we need to loosen this adjuster right here ever so slightly so that we can spin the collar. First, I'll show you, we're going to use these really super sketchy spring compressors that use an impact wrench. So we'll put these on, and then it'll give us the ability to rotate the spring collar at the top. So see if we can get these on here first. All right, now that we have these set up a little bit, we're gonna crank them down and maybe wear some safety glasses because these seem a little sketchy. And then we'll adjust the collar at the top here. Yeah, so these 600-pound springs are not really compressing too well, so we might actually have to take them to a shop that has a legitimate spring compressor to add some preload. So I think we'll do that, and then we'll get back to you. Okay, so we had some problems with adjusting the shocks on our own because those spring compressors you buy from the auto parts store aren't strong enough for heavy duty springs. So I took them to a local off-road shop, Silver State Off-Road, and they adjusted them for me. In theory, I wanted to get about 1 inch of thread showing, because then at the wheel and the hub, every inch you lift here, it doubles it at the wheel. So this is also the left one, and this was the right one because the Toyota 4Runners have a 4Runner lean. And so there's, the battery, the gas tank, and the driver on the left side or the driver's side. And so it compresses the springs just a little bit more with that added weight. So on this left spring, on the driver's side spring, they're both adjusted to about 7/8 of an inch. And the driver's side has about one of these threads, additional threads. So about 7/8 of an inch. And then after I got them all adjusted, I did a bunch more research, and on AccuTune's website, they don't recommend measuring based on the threads. And so we're just kind of wing it. Okay, so this video has gotten a little longer than I had anticipated just by talking about all the components. So I'm gonna split this into 2 videos. The first one will just be what we've talked about, and then the second video will be all the off-road comparison where you get to see the 2 different shocks in action. So subscribe for the second video, and thanks for watching. I appreciate it.